Warning. Warning.
Hello everybody, your favourite Uncle Frog here again. Now, you may be wondering why I'm standing in front of a Pell. Am I some sort of combat genius fighting god and I'm going to teach you a fantastic new technique? Or are you just wondering why the Pell has googly eyes? That's also a possibility. I will answer both questions. The latter later, the former now. Well, no, actually, I'm not a particularly good fighter. I'm very average. So why am I standing... I can't even find it. Why am I standing in front of this Pell today? Outside of my SCA life, in that life where you earn money in order to fund your SCA habit, I have a master's qualification in teaching, and I spend my days quickly and efficiently teaching various different things to German business people. And I had an interesting experience recently. I was up at Double Wars, and I came across a fighting technique that was new to me, at least, frame weight transfer. And the basics of this technique were taught to me very ably and very well by the wonderful Sir Helga. But then, of course, coming home, you have to turn those basic ideas that you've got and the basis of the system into conditioned reflexes, into thought processes, so it becomes easier to use. You don't have to think about it too actively. And I managed to do this quite quickly and quite efficiently. But the question is, why was I able to do that quickly? Well, because of my real life job. I have understanding of pedagogy, of how you teach people, and a better understanding than most people probably of educational psychology. And so I thought today I might actually be a little bit more serious with you. I thought, well, why not go through some of the methodology of how you can quickly and efficiently learn something. I mean, and these techniques will work for anything, but I'm going to specifically focus on perfidious here. Yes. This is perfidious, yes, my Pell has a name. The googly eyes came before the name, and when I spoke to Perfidious, he told me that he self-identifies, so he, him pronouns, so Perfidious is a him. The googly eyes, though, I'll explain later, as I said. I'm going to break this video down into three main parts. The first part is hindrances to learning, things that maybe stop us from learning or reduce our effectiveness. The second part is about accessibility. When we were at school, most likely, we understood learning as reading, writing and listening. But there are many different ways of accessing learning. And so I'm going to talk about some of those, and you can see if you like them or not, if they work for you or if they don't. The last part is going to be, well, I call it scaffolding, but I think most people today would think of it as mindfulness. How do we structure our learning process? I'm also going to talk a little bit about non-neurotypical learning and how that can differ a little bit, the slightly different aspects that have to be taken into consideration if you have high-functioning autism, for instance, or attention deficit or hyperactivity. So let's talk about things that prevent us from learning, hindrances to learning. The first one is a biggie, and it's to do with this little thing up here. As a child, we probably learned to ride a bicycle maybe, or to swim. And whilst we were doing that, we maybe drank half the swimming pool or fell over and scratched ourselves. And we didn't think anything of it. That was perfectly okay. Why? Because we're children and we don't mind failing. We fail, we go back, we do the thing, we correct, and we fail less. So each time we go through this process of experimentation, basically, try doing something, it goes wrong, try it again a different way, it goes wrong, and gradually over time we get better and better and better at doing this. But due to most Western educational systems and the idea that adults have to be perfect and not fail, we start thinking of failure as a problem. But it's not. Failure is part of the learning process. And so it's very important to get past this thing. How do we get past this thing? Well, two ways of doing it. One, when we go outside and practice on our Pell, wait for the birds to finish fighting in the background there, we make sure that we have our Pell in a private place where nobody else can watch us. At this point, yeah, we're going to fail, but we're not being judged for our failure, which is the important thing. You, in your own mind, yes, you can judge yourself, but don't. That's a very bad thing to do, and you're not going to do it, okay? Good. Right. The other option is to find a bunch of... There is a massive fight going on in the tree over there. That is quite loud. Anyway, back to this because it's more important. Okay. Really distracting. Can you hear that? I don't know. Anyway, so the other option is that we find a small group of people. I mean, this is normally kind of 6 or less, 2 or 3 people. It's quite a good size. Everybody round about the same level as you, so you're all going to have the same problems. And that means as a group, you group support and you fail together. But you don't. It's not failing, it's learning. And as long as you trust those other people in that group, it's like a peer group, then the learning can be quite effective. Okay? The other problem, the hindrance to learning, is this. Have you got a Pell? Now, I'm not asking, are you in the advanced planning stages of building a Pell? Have you actually got a Pell? If you haven't got a Pell, it's very hard to practice. Yeah? So, build a Pell. There are very, very few people who have 0 opportunities. There's a friend of mine who lives in Vienna. They have real problems trying to find a place to put up a Pell. They found a way of suspending... I'll get a photograph and I'll put it up. So you can see that this Pell, it's not perfect. You can't hit it really hard. It's suspended from the ceiling, and it's held in place, I think, by the chair, in fact. So you can't hit it hard, but you can do some practice. The Pell also doesn't need to be 100% perfect. It could be something, just a stick. So another friend of mine, she broke her Pell. So I'll put up the picture here somewhere. And you can see, okay, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't robust enough. It didn't survive. Doesn't matter. She got use out of it. She used it. She learned something by playing with the Pell. And she's going to build herself a new Pell. Okay, so about 50% of you now are feeling really, really bad because I've said to you, get a Pell, and you don't have a Pell. And you're going, okay, Uncle Frog, I'll build myself a Pell. Okay, good. Now the other half of you at this point are going, haha, yes, but Mr. Frog, I've got a Pell. I'm fantastic. Or are you? Hindrances to learning, things that prevent you from actually learning. One of those hindrances to learning can be the Pell. But hang on a moment, Uncle Frog, you just said you need to have a Pell in order to learn. Well, yes, you do, but you've got to be able to get to this thing, okay? Where is your Pell? Is it in the back of the garage? Is it in the shed? Is it covered in kids' toys? Have you loaned it out to a museum as an interesting and fantastic art exhibition? Where is your Pell? Can you get it out and can you use it inside 5 minutes? Perfidious here lives just over there. I live in a 1960s German chalet, so it has quite a large eavesdrop. And so Perfidious here lives on the patio, under the eavesdrop, next to the kitchen door. He lives with the sword, which is here. He also lives... Hang that up, it's not going to fall over. There we go. Also lives with the gloves. So all I have to do is go to the kitchen door, put my shoes on, step out, roll him out here and start practicing. Does that mean I do as much practice as I should do? No, it doesn't. But it means that there is nothing stopping me from starting that practice. I haven't put extra barriers in the way. Here in my head, I'm going, yep, it's fine. I can cock it up like a big un. It's absolutely fine because next time round, it'll be better. I'll have good days, I'll have bad days. When I have that feeling that, oh yeah, I want to go and practice on the Pell, it's very easy to step out that door and use it. Yeah. Sometimes my wife puts things on the Pell, but if I'm honest, it takes longer complaining about the things on the Pell than it does to take them off. It's very easy to get to. If it's going to take you half an hour to dig the Pell out, are you going to practice? Probably not. So make sure you can get to this Pell, set up and working inside 5 minutes. And this can be really important if you're not neurotypical. Because neurotypical sometimes, non-neurotypical, sorry, if you're not neurotypical, you can sometimes have trouble settling on a task. And so often it's a case of, if you do it for just 2 or 3 minutes and then walk away, that's good because you're starting to build this habit, build this process. But if it's going to take you half an hour to dig the Pell out, you're not going to start. So get it to the point where you can rush out and just do a little bit, and when it feels a bit too stressful or you're kind of getting distracted by something else, at that point it's fine. You can just put it away in the corner and off you go. Nobody in your house is going to get angry with you because it is stored in a specific place, and that place everybody's happy with. You can just roll it out, play with it, put it back again. And even if that's only 1 minute or 2 minutes, then that's fine because you started the process, you started doing it. And that means it's easier to come back to it the next time round. Okay, let's talk now about accessibility. That's the hindrance part we've done. The accessibility part is a little bit different. If we come from a very traditional learning background, we will think of learning as reading, writing and listening, sitting down in school, listening to the teacher talking to us. But there are many different ways of processing data. Think of this, if you like, as some people are running iOS, some people are running Android, some people are running Linux. And you've got a file that you need to access. And different people using different processing systems are going to access different apps. And even if you're using the same system, Android, one person might prefer to use this app, one person might prefer to use this app. This is just the easy way in which we personally can process data. Now, some people, it's I think the technical word for this one is kinesthetic. It's like body-based, movement-based learning. When I needed to learn to speak German, I'm very I like to move. I like to move my hands. I like to walk up and down. And so I was writing things down on cards so I could turn them round, and I was walking up and down whilst I was trying to remember something. Of course, you're not allowed to do that in the classroom normally. This, if you like doing this, well, this is easy. If you're kinesthetic, if you're movement-based, this is going to be really, really easy. But what happens if you're not? Well, maybe you need a problem. Maybe if you give yourself a problem that you need to find an answer to, you find it easier to learn. At that point, you're looking at the Pell and you're saying, right, okay, I need to be able to hit the Pell harder. How do I do that? Or I need to be able to stand here and hit the Pell on this side. How do I do that? And you're giving yourself a series of problems that you need to try and solve. Other people actually need to walk away and have a bit of a conversation in their heads and come back again. So practice for a little bit, walk off, make yourself a cup of tea, drink it, have a think inside your head, and just have that conversation. Well, I did that, and I need to do this, and maybe that will work, and pop, 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 pop. Okay? So having a conversation inside your head can be really, really helpful at this point. Another version of that is having a conversation with other people. And you can do this in two ways. You can meet up with somebody, wherever it might be during the week, in the pub, have a chat with them about how to fight on the Pell, come back and try it out. Or alternatively, like I said before, sometimes this group learning thing helps really well. And you've got 2 or 3 people, you have that conversation, and you practice again on the Pell. So that's another option. Some people are extremely visually based, and talking to the person, they're not going to get it. But if they can see a picture or a video, they're going to pick it up super fast. So how do we do this? This is a little bit more complicated, but what we do is we go onto YouTube, of course, and we find some of those very good expert videos from other members of the SCA who are excellent fighters, and they've done brilliant videos. And you go and look at that video. But what do you do next? Well, you look at the video whilst you're next to your Pell. You look at it, you practice. You look at it, you practice. But you do something extra at the same time. If you can, you set up your phone to video you whilst you're fighting. Or not fighting, but practicing. So, what does that do? Well, it activates all this visual stuff. You can go and have a look, see what the expert is saying you should do. And you're saying, right, okay, I'm thinking about, say, Helga, I have to find the pocket, I have to engage the lat and the glute, and then leading with the elbow, I can fire. Okay, so that's how I do these things, but I could be watching a video of her doing that. Okay? Then I practice it on the Pell, and I think I've got it right. But then I look at the video that I've made of myself, and I see if my mental image of what I think I did matches up to what I actually did. Some of us need to have a little bit of noise in the background in order to focus. For me, it really doesn't work. But my wife is like that. If she needs to focus on something for a long period of time, she likes to have either the TV on in the background or some music playing. Lightly in the background, something running can often help people focus. Turning this into a game can also be really helpful. At this point, I'm reminded of a running app called flies everywhere, called Run Zombie Run. In this app, you're imagining that there's a zombie apocalypse and you're running away from the zombies, and you have to run fast enough not to get eaten by them. Okay. For some people, that's great. It really, really works. For other people, absolutely not. But you can start playing games around the Pell. Turn this into some kind of fun. You could turn it into a competition with somebody else. The 100, is it called the Pell 100? This 100 days, 100 strikes challenge is like a game. It's a challenge-based game. It's nothing to stop you setting up a game with somebody else, or to create games of how you're going to hit the Pell. This can also be a very, very good way of learning. Another thing to think about here is that sometimes we need processing time or thinking time. The Pell 100 is an excellent challenge game, but it doesn't really give you a lot of time to process, because each day you have to go out and hit this thing 100 times for 100 days. Some people, they are far more successful if they do mindful work on the Pell 1 day a week. How long you work on the Pell, well, that's an interesting question. We'll come to that in a minute. But it can be very effective to do a little bit of work, walk away and have a think for 3 or 4 days, or a week maybe, and then come back again. How long should you actually be practicing on the Pell? If we're talking about building muscle power, whether that's endurance or whether that's strength, that's something completely different. I'm not talking about that. I don't know really anything about that. But when we're talking about mental focus, this gets a little bit tricky. If we're listening to somebody, normally our focus is somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, depending on culture, what we do in our normal jobs, whether we're neurotypical or non-neurotypical. So 15 minutes is a good ballpark figure for listening to somebody talking to us. At that point, we start sort of going, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if that was right. If you have attention deficit, that can be significantly shorter. If you have high-functioning autism, that can be extremely long. For neurotypicals, so the NTs, the ballpark figure would be 15 minutes. Now, at this point, a lot of people are saying, yeah, but I can focus a lot longer on X, Y, and Z. Yes, you can. But here we're talking about effective, truly effective focusing. And the most effective part of that focus is the first 15 to 20 minutes of any hour without a break. And this is a very important thing to consider. When we manage to focus for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on a task, we haven't fully focused on that task exclusively for all of that time. What we've actually done is we've surfaced from that, resorted a bit of paper, looked at something else, somebody has yelled something to us and we've gone, yeah, it's okay. And we've come back to the task. And this is that refocusing point. This is the reason why if you listen to a lot of good presenters, people doing a presentation, what they will do is they will ask a rhetorical question. You have understood this, haven't you? Or, well, how would we solve this task? And they'll leave a little pause. And that little pause is just enough to reset you. Okay, and you go, oh, okay. So, attention spans vary quite considerably. Yes, we can focus for a couple of hours at a time. But if we want to be truly effective, 15-ish minutes, ballpark figure, and put the sword down, take off the gloves, wipe the sweat off your hands, put the gloves back on again, and carry on. Or make yourself a cup of coffee, or go and find the cat and poke it. Whatever you need to do, just that little bit of reset, and it can be just a couple of seconds, but it can really help to focus. How long should we practice? Well, 15 minutes is a good ballpark figure for minimum. Beyond that, that's fine, but 15 minutes minimum. 15 minutes once per week? Probably not. 15 minutes twice per week, spaced out in the week, because your short-term memory starts to kind of like fall off, and if you get like 2 or 3 days after that, you're going to start forgetting things. And so if you can remind yourself, start forgetting, remind yourself, start forgetting. Okay, so every kind of 3 or 4 days, going back and doing at least 15 minutes on the Pell. So what you could do there is, say, a hour session on the Pell one day, and then come back to it and spend 15 minutes in the middle of the week when you don't have too much time. But that's okay, it's still going to be effective, it's going to be reminding you of things. Right, so that's hindrances to learning, and that's accessibility. Different ways in which we can process information, which is not just reading, writing, and listening. Now I want to talk about, if you like, mindfulness, or what I would call scaffolding, how we structure our learning process. And this is very important for people who are not neurotypicals. So the non-neurotypicals here, sometimes tasks can seem very difficult to pin down, or they can seem too big. And often, even with neurotypical people that I teach, they will come to me and they say, I want to learn this, I want to get better at this. When in fact, you need to get better at this. I want to be a better sword fighter. Well, yeah, great. But how are you going to do that? You need to think about things like how you're standing, your stance. You need to think about how you're defending. You need to think about how you're attacking. And so you need to break it down into groups. Now, you can break it down into those 3 groups. I like to break it down into finer things than that. And so the first one I always go for is form. And so I will come up to the Pell, I'll come up to Perfidious, and I'll say to him, good morning, Perfidious. Today we are going to do form. And I'll have a little chat with him, and we'll figure things out. What do I mean by form? Well, from Double Wars, so Helga was teaching us about how to get this elbow to start, putting it into the right position. It's not down here, it's not up here, it's not like this, it's like this. And then at that point, I settle the shoulder into its pocket, and I can feel this here. And then I can bring it round to the front if I want to and settle it in. Bring this back, and I always follow with the elbow. And so at this point, I am very carefully thinking about how I do this. Why am I doing it in front of the Pell? Well, lost my sword. Why am I doing it in front of the Pell? Well, I don't need to. I can do this making my breakfast in the morning. But if I'm doing it in front of the Pell, I'm making sure I'm at the right distance from my opponent at that point. And also form, as she said, face the threat. Don't face the person, face the threat, or face the threat if they're left-handed. Okay, so I can practice that form. And I'm being very mindful at this point. I'm thinking about just the form. The next thing I like to do is practice hitting, and here I'm practicing speed. I am not practicing accuracy, control, nothing like that. Just how fast can I launch this shot? Okay? That's all I'm doing. Nothing else around it. I don't care about anything else at that point. Just speed, speed, speed. Like the movie Cars. Think speed. I am speed. Try that, and yeah, I get faster, because that's the only thing I have to think about. I don't care. Is it perfect form? No. Did it hit where I wanted it to hit? No. Did it hit as hard as I wanted it to hit, or as soft as I wanted it to hit? No. But was it fast enough? Yes. Was it faster than last time? Yes. Okay, tick, result. It's a small, achievable goal, okay? And like I said, if you're non-neurotypical, especially if you have trouble settling on these big tasks or breaking things down, this can be super helpful at that point. Next thing I go for is accuracy. So once I've got the speed up, I go for accuracy. And at this point, I start dropping the speed down to get the accuracy, and then I bring the speed up again to what I'd managed in my first part, when I was purely training for speed. Now I want to get accuracy. And so I kind of start playing around with two of these things, layering up. And so I get speed and accuracy at that point. The next thing I go for is control. What do I mean by control? This is not accuracy. This is about knowing how hard I put that shot in. I come from a live still group originally, and that's a touch system. We don't hit each other particularly hard because, I mean, well, if you see my arming up video, you know, we're basically wearing a t-shirt when we fight. So you have to know how hard you're hitting. It's also the same thing in the SCA. Depending on which kingdom you're in, you hit harder or you hit softer. And so you have to be able to know how hard you are hitting. So at this point, it's about control. It's not about, can I hit harder, can I hit softer? It's about knowing exactly how hard that shot was. Next thing is not originally one of mine, actually. It's from somebody else, and I'm really grateful for them for giving me this one. I should have thought about it, but I didn't. Flow. Flow. What do we mean by flow? Well, flow is being able to move in and out and around the Pell whilst staying in our guard, whilst moving our feet properly, and so we can practice that. And again, do we need a Pell for that? Well, no, we don't, but it helps to have a Pell because we need to stay in combat distance, in fighting distance, you know, the middle distance at this point. Next thing I start practicing after that is combinations. I think that's self-explanatory. Endurance. Endurance is obviously a physical thing. It requires some mental processing there, because as you get tired, so your form starts to fall away. Maybe your control isn't as good as it used to be. So as you know, you're starting to get tired, you need to have that mental process in there. It's not just blind hitting. And the final thing is experimentation. This is where maybe I've learned something new, or I've been fighting somebody else and I've got, why can't I hit them? Why do they always defend that shot? What is open? How can I get past this defense? And so I practice this on Perfidious. Okay? Good. So that gives us our three big ideas. First one is hindrance. This idea, you know, I'm not allowed to fail because I'm an adult. Yeah, you are. Of course, you have to fail to learn. It's just self-explanatory. Find yourself a safe place, with people or without people. It doesn't matter. And just practice. Make sure that you can get to the Pell. If you can't get to the Pell, you can't practice. Get a Pell. It doesn't have to be the perfect Pell. Perfect Pell. Ooh, that rhymes. It doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be usable. Okay? Then we have to think about accessibility. It's not just reading, writing and listening. It's not just blindly hitting this thing. We can play games with it. We can video ourselves or watch a video. We can talk about it. We can have a conversation in our head. We can problem solve. We can listen to music in the background. We've got all of these different options to help make this process easier for us. And often when I talk about these types of accessibility, yeah, we can all use all of these ones. But there's probably two or three that we're going to find work really well for us. So have a think about something that you learnt to do that you didn't even think of as learning. Something that was so simple, it was just easy. What was it? How did you do it? And then adapt that to this. And lastly, we need to structure how we approach Pell work. We need to break, I want to be a better fighter, down into practice my form, practice attack, practice defense, practice speed of strike, practice accuracy of strike, whatever it is. The ones that I gave you, they are my set, okay? But have your own set. Figure out what you're going to do. And, if you go to the gym, you have back days, you have push days, you have leg days. Do that on the Pell. Have a form day, have a speed day, have a combination day, have a defense day, have an attack day. Just mindfully think, which little piece of this really big puzzle do I want to work on today? One final important thing. Often we have to break old habits to make newer, better habits. And when we do that, sometimes our ability drops. It won't drop for long, but we might be trying out this whole fantastic new thing and it's all kind of working really well on the Pell. And then I go to my battle practice and I fight and I get absolutely slaughtered. I get hammered. I get driven into the ground like a little tent peg. And I come back and it doesn't work. Yeah, it is. It's working and it's going to work. All that's happening is that your brain is rewiring itself at that point, and you just happen to go to battle practice in the middle of this rewiring and you're caught between 2 points. Okay? This can often be very short if you know what you're doing and you have a process. If you are trying to, let's say, hypothetically speaking, let's say, move from a live still touch system to a heavy hitting system where the combat is very similar but also very different at the same time, it could take you a very long time until you find out what works. Took me 2 years, hypothetically speaking, to actually get to the point where I feel, yeah, this is now starting to work. I really feel like I'm achieving something now. But this is the point. You have to stick with it. And there will be days when things just go horribly wrong. It just happens. That's life. Finally, the most important thing we need to talk about, googly eyes. How did Perfidious end up with googly eyes? Well, Perfidious actually has grown over the years. Originally, he did not have arms. It was just a stick. And like I said, he used to live, he still does, he lives on the patio. And at one point he was living in front of the window because that was the easiest place to store him. And every time my wife walked past, she just went, stick, which was fine. And then one day I thought, I'm going to be clever. I'm going to put some arms on Perfidious because it's good for practice. And so I put some arms onto Perfidious. And at this point, every time my wife walked past the window, she went, bleh! Because... Yes, Adam. Yes. Okay. Yes, I'll do it again. Yes. Yeah. What did she do? She went, bleh! She used to walk past the window and get shocked because she thought that Perfidious was a person, and she was a bit worried because there shouldn't be anybody in the back garden. And so my wife, being the wonderful lady that she is, stuck 2 googly eyes onto him. Consequently, he now has a name. He's part of the family. At the end of these videos, I always say, please comment, rate, and subscribe. This time round, please comment. I really want to know, from a professional point of view, did this help? Has it given you food for thought? Which direction are you going to go in? What are you going to do? So I'd absolutely love it. If you've got to this point, you might have got bored and switched off kind of like 20 minutes ago. But if you're still here, please comment this time round. I'll be very interested in knowing what you're thinking. And also rate and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!